Hello, everybody. James here, WSI. We've got a returning guest, but before I get to him, we've got to do a couple of plugs. Owen, Hart, King of Pranks, of course, that I wrote, a great book. And Dwayne, The Rock Johnson, the People's Champion, another biography by yours truly. Great reviews on Amazon. I encourage you to go there and buy them, as I always do. But for now, let's take it to a returning guest. And DDP, what are those things on your arms? Sorry, I surprised you there, man.
I just got done working out. And these are actually, like, I didn't lift weights for 15 years, mainly because my ego couldn't go in the gym because I'm always going to try to lift heavier. And as you get older, you can see a lot of guys' chests are separated. Their biceps are torn. Their triceps are torn. I mean, so many guys are in that shape. And it's really important to me as I age. I'm going to be 67 in another 4 more weeks. It's important that I look like when I talk about my DDP yoga. And that's why I stopped lifting completely for 15 years. But one of the things I added to my workouts are these cuffs. They're called power cuffs. They're not even out yet. They are the next evolution of my jack straps that I had. And they're BFR, meaning blood flow restriction training. So when you're lifting with these weights on, you can't lift heavy. Like, you can't. I'll give you an example. If I was in the gym today and I was just doing curls, right? I'd probably start with like 35s and work my way up to 55s. Today, when I'm doing curls, back then I would also be doing, 8 to 10 reps. Today, I started with 10-pound dumbbells. Then I went to 12 and a half. Then I went to 15. Now I'm at 17 and a half pounds. But the way blood flow restriction's done, you do 30 reps, then you take off 30 seconds, then you do 15 reps, and you take off 30 seconds, then you come back with 15 more reps, then you come back with 30-second break, then you go to 15 reps. So it's 75 reps, just under 5 minutes, between 4.5 to 5 minutes. And what happens when you power up and you dial them up, think of a tourniquet and it gets tighter. Now the blood flow in your arm, I mean, they're like rocks. Like the reason when you're lifting, when you get to those last couple of reps, the reason why that's where you grow is because you're ripping down the muscle, and that's where all the blood flow comes in. These things, these cups, they were originally made for PT, physical therapy. I think you guys call it physio.
Yeah.
They were made by a Japanese doctor to get blood flow right into the muscle, whether it's your quads, your knee, whether it's your arms, it could be your pec. You'd still wear these if you had Cody, example, had his pec ripped right off his body, lifting 315 pounds. Okay? That's the shit that happens. So then he had to go and get reattached. He'll never lift heavy again. He went right to these blood flow restricted, and he was using a version that's primitive and not that good. When he saw these, and I put the Nightmare logo on them, he loves them, wears them all the time, and especially pumps up before he goes out on TV. He just puts these things on. So what this does is it allows you to get and build muscle and strength without beating your body up. Like, there's no wear and tear on my joints. It's 17 and a half pounds. Some guys may build up to 30, but it's only 30 pounds. For me personally, I just got done doing a DDP yoga workout with the straps warmed up. Then I hit the weights. You're done in 35 minutes. Then I went back on the mat and finished up with some DDPY at the end. And I got a total complete body workout, but my whole body has changed now. My shoulders are out, my pecs, my arms. Again, I'm getting the most without doing the damage. And we're about to get these out there. I just literally just got right out of the gym and came over here because I was running late. But we're going to put these out probably in about 4 or 5 weeks. You'll start to see a big push. I've had guys wearing them, though, for the last year, and you're going to see some unbelievable transformations of just muscle mass. And I'm not talking about all jacked up, but where you look like a fitness model, a fitness guy. And that's what really everybody looks for. Some guys look to get as big as they can, but this isn't for that. This is for once you've got that size, you can hold on to it, lifting, 20 to 30% of the weight. So that's what these things are called power cuffs. They'll be out probably in 4 or 5 weeks.
Thing is we are probably going to be seeing each other because I'm going to be at the same place you are at the end of April, which is actually partially or mostly why you're coming on to talk to me today. So you can get me a pair of them hand delivered. Then, are you actually going to be selling them in Manchester?
I will bring a couple of pairs, but if you're going to actually do it and you're going to we do the befores, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. If you're going to do it and give me 100%, James, I'll just give them to you. All right. But I want you to, we'll talk about it and stuff,
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, I'm going to be there, and I know very much about physio because I tore my ACL some months ago. Finally got my surgery April 6th. Now, finally got the date through, so you'll know it's me. So I'm going to be the only one hobbling around on crutches. I don't know what the mobility is after 3 weeks, though.
I'm going to bring you the legs too, not just arms, because legs. Like example, Bobby Fish. Everybody. This is a wrestling show. Everybody knows who Bobby Fish is. Bobby, I would go down to NXT and train the young guys and girls. Guys are guys and girls to me. I would go down there and I would train them my program. Well, a couple of years ago, I'd gone down there to do something with them. And Bobby Fish walked up to me and he goes, Dallas, he goes, I got to thank you, man. He goes, I don't know if you saw, but I tore my ACL. I said, yeah, I saw that, dude. He goes, you know how I got back? Your program.
Yeah.
And he said, what I did is because I couldn't do anything. So I did the bed workouts. And then I did the chair workouts. And then I used the chair because all that's on the app. Chair Force. Bed flex is the bed stuff. Chair Force is the seated chair. And Stand Strong is using the chair. He goes, I've just gotten where I've moved to a block as opposed to the chair. So I was like, wow. Now, if he would have been using my power cuffs on his legs, it would have probably healed at least 30% faster. And so that's what these things were developed for originally. And when I saw them, because I do, with DDP yoga, I do a lot of dynamic resistance, flexing, engaging as you're moving. You power these babies up, you start doing that, your heart rate goes boom, but so does your, it's like you're lifting weights. But when you add the weight to it, then it goes to another level.
And as I alluded to before, you're coming to Manchester April 29th. Are you only here for one day? I think you're only here for one day, aren't you?
No, I'm here for 2 weeks. That's one of the reasons I want to talk to you.
Oh, right.
Because the first show that we have is in Glasgow. Going to fly into Manchester, because that's where I'm going to be for the show. For the love of wrestling.
Yep, 29th and 30th of April, I should say, as well.
Yes, and of course I'll be doing pictures and autographs, and I'm doing the Q&A there too. They've got me set to do that, and the about a week or so before, because I'm going to get in on the 17th, because I love your country, man, and it's so beautiful, and it blew my mind the last time I went there before COVID. I couldn't believe I'm super clean, like gluten-free, dairy-free, GMO-free. I'm all about organic and eating real food. That's the reason why I look like this. I'll be going to be 67. So we're going to get in there early. My wife is a mountain climber. She's climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. She's climbed Mount Fuji. She's been to Machu Picchu. she's been all over the world, and she loves counting mountains. And there's 4,000-foot mountains, that she wants to climb. She normally does 14,000, but a lot of those mountains start like at 9. The ground level's 9. But we're going to go up there, and she's never seen the country. She's seen all over the world. She's never been to the UK. So our first, after we go to where the mountains are, wherever that section is, we're going to head over into Glasgow, and I'm going to do a workshop there with my buddy Murray, who's one of my instructors from there. And right now, we've already got 85 people in Glasgow. Now you got to understand, when I did All In, the first All In, and that's my last time I've really gone out and done any big workshops. We did 191 people working out with me at one time. Now, when they come, my wife and I are waiting there to greet everybody, and we got somebody working the tables and stuff. We have my wife and I are sitting there. So as soon as you walk in, we greet you, we take a picture. So now you get a picture with it too, and then you get a little conversation. As everybody comes in, as everybody fills in, then I'll come around to the front and I'll do inspiration meets perspiration. Going to give a workout that's going to pump everybody up. Then I break it down if people have never been there, and we work on the diamond dozen, which are the main moves we're going to use in the workout. And for some people, even though that's not the workout, it's just a tutorial. There's people who are kind of they're new to it, so they're kind of blown up. So they sit down as we do the workout. That's about 45 minutes too. The whole thing's like 2.5, 3 hours. And I encourage everyone to come early to get their picture. But whoever comes late, we'll get their pictures at the end. And what's funny is, say I have 100 people, there might be 5 or 6 or 7 people sitting down, but inevitably they get up and they start doing it with them, because I'm always showing a modification. So, they get into it, and all of a sudden they just worked out for an hour and a half, and they don't realize that, like, oh my God, I can do this. And it's so important for people to, people who live in the world of I can't, but want to live in the world of I can. If you say you can and you say you can't, you're right. And that is something that I really try to instill in people, changing the story they tell themselves. And then we take a big group picture with everybody. And then the next day we're going to be going to Newcastle. And I believe there's like 60 people signed up for that. And then we've got some more time off. And then we go to For the Love of Wrestling. And then we have another little bit of time off. And then we go to our last workshop, which will be in Birmingham, which as of today, there's 132 people. So it's going to, the energy from even 20 people, the energy is great. But when you get in the 50, 60, 100 or more, the energy is through the roof, and everybody leaves there so pumped up. And it's been so long since I've been there, with COVID and all that. It's been like 3+ years, almost 4 years. So I'm really looking forward to get back there and just to do the tour.
Yeah, it's still cold, it still rains. You're not missing too much, sorry. Right, I've asked a ton of, I've written down a ton of questions, some from the fans, some from me, and we'll get through as many as we can until we hit 1:30 your time. So we've got about an hour or so we'll do as many as we can. And the first one is, this is from me. As you know, I interviewed Eric Watts a few weeks ago.
Wait. Anybody who wants to know how they can go to the workshop, DDP Yoga Workshops with an S. DDP Yoga Workshops with an S.com, and you can sign up there. Okay.
There we go. Listen, I'll stick all the links on. Don't you worry about that. We'll do all the plugs at the end as well, so I've got them all. Now, a mutual friend of ours, Eric Watts, I interviewed him a few weeks ago. He said a couple of interesting things I was hoping you could confirm. One, did you and Eric beat the shit out of each other during your matches in 92, 93, around that thing? And two, and Eric also alluded to this, did he have nuclear heat in the back when he first came in?
All right, let's start with the first one. When you're with your buddies, whether it was me and Eric or me and Johnny B. Bad, aka Mark Merrow, Van Hammer, with the guys you come in with, you're green and you're stiff. And on top of that, you want to stiff in the beginning, because you want to be able to really react. And Watsy and I, man, we beat the hell out of each other. But, then we go out drinking afterwards. It was like one of those deals. And as far as heat, oh my God. Let's put it like this. They brought him in. Bill Watts, his father, Cowboy Bill Watts, WWE Hall of Famer, brought him in probably October of that, maybe September of that year. He started wrestling in October. He's green as grass. And he's just started going over everybody, including Arn Anderson, which, like, Steve Austin going over Arn Anderson at that time, whole different animal. Okay. Even though Steve was young and still green, if he was to go over, people are going to accept it because it's Steve Austin. And he's put years of work in. Eric Watts is related, obviously, to Cowboy Bill Watts, and the push. It's a hard thing. I was just talking about Van Hammer, because Van Hammer, right before him, Mark Hildreth came in, and he looked so unbelievable. 6'5", 278 pounds of twisted steel and sex appeal, shredded body. So you can't just beat him, you got to bring him in. Well, they pushed him too fast as well. And whenever that happens, because remember, it wasn't like it was 1990 or 1991, wasn't like it was in 97, where there was so many fans. It was like it was a handful of fans. Like, I would go to a show when I had started wrestling with Ric Flair, Sting, the Road Warriors, Lex Luger on the card, and there were towns, and we might have drawn 400 people. Think about that.
The Jim Herd. Are we blaming Jim Herd for that one, we think, or?
I don't really blame any person except for the business is cyclical. Meaning it does this. It has its highs and it has its lows, but those real wrestling fans, the ones who are a little jaded or a lot jaded, you got to remember there was no internet back then. So everybody got what they heard from Wade Keller on the Torch or Meltzer on the Observer. That's all they saw. And so if he gave out what his opinion was, really either of them, it pretty much could make or break somebody. And for someone like Hammer and Watts, it was brutal. And always better to stay under the radar with those guys, because they're going to say what they feel, but it's their opinion. It's an educated opinion, but some of it, like, boy, I heard Eric Bischoff talking the other day, and he just reamed friggin' Meltzer. And I can't remember. I know one of the things had something to do with me, like I didn't get over in the WWE when I went there because the fans, weren't WC. I mean, it didn't make any sense. I wasn't over enough to go there. I was insanely over in 97 and 98, 99 and 2000. Insanely over. Wow, is this really happening over? So he put Meltzer in his place, but Meltzer's still gonna talk and say what he says, and it is what it is. It's part of the business. But Watsy suffered big time. You got to remember too, that year, I've been there all year, and we're both rookies. And I'm thinking I'm going to be the rookie of the year. There's no way I'm not. And then Eric came in right at the end. And with that push and everything, I was runner up to E. Mm. And it's another thing that gave me a driving force. You know, it's funny too. When I'm reading Meltzer's, I'm thinking, well, Meltzer knows I'm the rookie of the year. And then I see, who the hell is Rey Mysterio? You know, I didn't know who he was. And, you know, I'm number 2 again. And I end up about 95 or 96. Whenever Rey came in, someone said, oh, Rey Mysterio's going to the ring. So I go, Rey Mysterio? So I walk out there and I watch his match and I'm like, wow. I was a really distant second to Rey Mysterio.
So you didn't harbor resentment to Rey then, at least.
Yeah, no, I didn't have any resentment to Eric either. You know, I look at things that push me and make me work harder. Still today, it's going to be 67. You know, I'm the same person. You know, I feel like I'm 44 still. You know, I don't feel 67. I don't look it, you know.
I'm going to move on. And I didn't tell you this beforehand, but you were, I interviewed you pretty much a year to the day, almost, or a year to the month, whatever it was. We talked about other things then. And one of your videos, I think you're talking about Hulk Hogan's real height. For whatever reason, that just really clicked with people who were watching. Got over 200,000 views, did really well. And you were the number 1 video for that entire year until a few weeks ago when Eric Bischoff overtook you. So now in the charts, Eric is now above you. So we'll have to try and beat him. I'm sure we will. But I was thinking, it's like the first time you met Eric, I'm presuming is the AWA. And I spoke to Eric not long ago. And was he always a hustler even in those days? Was he always trying to climb up the corporate ladder kind of thing? Or did he sort of reside in his place as a commentator, announcer at that time?
You know, it's funny because my first meeting with Eric Bischoff was both of us really shit-faced. I had done a diamond doll search in Wisconsin where the men are men and the women are too. I mean, it wasn't like being down in Florida where I come from that time, where it's the beaches and there's so many beautiful women. So I got drunk that night doing the contest, and I walked up to Pat Tanaka, one of my wrestlers. I said, Patty, let's get out of here, dude. I got to get something to eat. And Bischoff was like, hey, we're in the middle of a conversation, blah, 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 blah. So I said something back. He said something back. Next thing you know, we're both going for each other. I met him in a pull-apart fight. Pat and Paul took me out, like, let's go get something to eat. You don't want to stay in his office. Don't fuck with him. You know, I just let it go. And then later that night, after eating, coming back, getting off the elevator, he got off the elevator at the same time with his wife, Lori, who is an angel, and 3 guys from the office. And they're like, go to your room, go to your room. So I just go to my room. And he goes, yeah, go to your room. And he starts cutting a promo on me. So, boom, now we go to your room, go to your room, go to my room. Next morning, I'm up. And I'm going to go see how tough he is now. Because he's on the same floor. I see where he walked in. I'm going to go down there and see him. And I hear at the door. The door's knocking. I think it's 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, bing, I'm up. I got to catch a flight, but I want to stop by his room first. And I open the door, and he's there. And he looks really rode hard and put away wet boys, hungover as hell. And he used to have hair down to his shoulders. And it was still silver back then. Because I was 31, so he was 32 at the time. And Eric, who is a black, 3rd-degree black belt in karate, who fought in a bunch of tournaments, ain't afraid of anybody, especially back then. He will encourage it more than knock it down. So I opened the door, and as I opened it, it kind of stunned me a little bit. And he goes, hey, I heard I was a real asshole last night. I said, yeah, you were. As a matter of fact, I was just on my on my way to your room to talk about it. And he goes, I saved you the trip. Now, this is my memory of it, okay? He, of course, has his own memory, and then there's what really happened. But this is exactly what I remember because it stuck with me so much. He said, there's two ways we can handle this. Yeah, remember, I'm running nightclubs. Since I was been in the nightclub business at that point for 14 years, since I was 17. I'm 32 now, you know? And I've heard every excuse to come back in the bar. And his, to me, was there's two ways we can handle this. One, accept my apology and shake my hand. He said, or two, and he pulled out his front three teeth. This is who Eric Bischoff is. And he says, punch me in the mouth. He goes, whichever one works for you, I'm good with it. Like, he knew he fucked up. He's going to be accountable for his actions. And if it takes getting punched in the mouth, so be it. I popped. I was like, oh, that's phenomenal. I go, dude, I've never heard that ever. I said, I would much rather shake your hand. Shook a hand. It's over. Now, a year and a half later, Dusty, I'm in WCW, and I'm doing color with Lance Russell, who's very famous from Tennessee.
Yeah.
Great announcer. But Lance was 72, but he looked like he was like 57. You know, he didn't look older, but they wanted some young face. So Dusty said, there's a guy named Eric Bischoff from the AWA coming here. Do you remember him? And I said, name sounds familiar, but I don't really remember him. So he says, well, if you like him, help him out. If you don't, you know, just let him bury himself. I was like, okay. So I'm waiting and waiting and waiting because I got to be at TV in Columbus, Georgia to manage the Freebirds. So I got to do this thing, but he's been circling and circling Atlanta, the plane. So he finally gets there. And remember, last guy I saw was in a leather coat, a biker coat, gray hair down to here. I wasn't expecting the guy who walked in looked like a Ken doll. You know, perfect, model, handsome son of a bitch.
Had his teeth.
You know,
had his teeth
everything. I mean, he looked like $1 million. But I saw the eyes and I knew exactly who he was. But we don't have time to talk about anything. I go, oh, bro, you got it here. Shook his hand. I go, come on, we got to get right in the studio right away because I got to get to TV in Columbus. He's like, okay. So we get it in the booth this big. It's like we're sitting on top of each other, two monitors there. And I said, okay, let's do this take. And he does it with me, but it was all each of us doing color, you know? And I said to him, I said, let me ask you a question. I said, how much do you want this job? And he said, I need it bad. He goes, I shit the bed in New York, meaning WWE. My wife's pregnant with my second kid. He goes, Vern hasn't paid me for a year. I've been working like a journeyman. I said, okay, here's the deal. Dusty told me, you got to do the play-by-play, and I'll do the color. I said, let's start it again. Within a minute, I go, stop it. I look at him. I go, you don't know how to do play-by-play, do you? That's not really. He goes, we did color. We talked about things. I go, not here. I said, that'll happen, but you got to do the play-by-play. So since you don't know it, let's do this. Play it again. All right, collar and elbow lockup. Pulls him into a headlock. Pushes him off. Push him up. Boom, big tackle. Ooh, and he rolls out. I go, I'll do the color right there. So we do it. He does it verbatim. Then we stop it again. We do it again. Stop it again. Do it again. Finally, about maybe 15 minutes later, we got it. I go, let's take this one. I think he's got it. And Eric goes, hold on a second. He goes, can I ask you a question? I said, yeah, sure. He goes, do you remember me? I said, yeah, you're the guy I almost got in a fight with in the AWA. He goes, just checking. Like he couldn't believe, because in our business, when someone fucks you around or fucks with you, it's always been when you get on top, you fuck that person back. That's not who I am. And I don't give a fuck what the situation is. I am never going to change who I am because of the way other people act. I know who the fuck I am. And I know I try to always let shit go. People who hold on to hatred or anger is like you swallowing poison and expecting the other person to die. It doesn't work. I mean, Eric was so over with me because of that shake my hand, accept my apology, or punch me in the mouth. That's exactly how it happened because that was burned into my brain. I was like, wow, what a guy of character. That's what I saw, and there's times we bought houses on the other side of the street, bringing like 100 yards, not 50 yards from each other. We never knew it because Dusty Rhodes' wife, Cody's mom, Michelle, sold me that house and the other one to Eric. And she wasn't really familiar with that part of Atlanta because it's so big. So when we said, I bought a house, I said, so did I. Oh, no kidding. Where? Mableton. So did I. And where are you at? Valley Shannon. I go, fuck you. Because we fuck you. I go, I'm on Valley Shannon. Like, that's how it happened. Like, God put us together. That's how I prefer to believe what happened, because when I was not, they weren't going to let me manage anymore because I looked like Diamond Dallas Page. The hair and the clothes and the bling, the Diamond Dolls and the rap. I was overshadowing the wrestlers. Scott Hall warned me all the time about it, but I thought I knew everything back then.
And you were too tall as well for a manager. I mean, you were taller than the people, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like there was you and Slick. It's like Slick, if you remember from the WWE. He was the only other tall manager, but he was also dead skinny. You were just huge.
Yeah. Yeah. It was all happened the way it was supposed to. I remember Magnum telling me Dusty doesn't have the heart to do this. So he asked me, we're still going to let you be a color commentator with Eric, but we want you in production now. We want you in the office side. We want you to help with interviews and all that stuff. We can't let you manage anymore. And I was like, what? Well, I just got Scott Hall. I just created that whole gimmick for him. Like, I'm thinking this is going to be a great year, and I'm only like probably 5 months into my contract because it took 4 months just to get a contract. So I got this contract, and now they're telling me not going to let me manage anymore. Oh man, oh my God. I go, but why? What did I do? I'll fix it. He goes, you can't. I go, what do you mean I can't? He goes, because it's you. It's not your fault. I go, what do you mean it's me? He goes, it's the hair, it's the bling. Here's one of my favorite pictures. This is Diamond Dallas Page in my 62 big Cadillac with rhinestone diamond tie, sequin jacket. If you'll see the jeans with holes in the knees in 1989.
Where did the Cadillac go? Did you sell it? Who did you sell it to? When did you sell it?
I don't know. At some point, it was always having to be, I had it for like 8 years. And it was the place that really Razor Ramon was born, because that's where Scott was getting high. He didn't drink or anything back then. And he'd be doing Scarface with a buzz. And that's where that whole thing was born. But Magnum tells me, hey, D, it's not your fault. It's you. It's the clothes. It's the bling. It's the rap. It's the dolls. He's going, you're taking too much attention away from the boys. And I swear to God, James, I look at him and I go, Magnum, are you telling me I'm too over the top for professional fucking wrestling? And he laughed just like that. And he goes, hey, what we should have done is put you in a pair of tights and boots and see if you can do this. And he walked away. And that was a defining moment for me.
I'm going to be bouncing up and down with in the timeline with questions here, and one of them is actually very, very modern now. I want to talk about Change or Die, and where is it now in the production? And also, I interviewed Buff Bagwell about a week before he publicly announced he was leaving, and this is I'm so naive. So when I was talking to him, I was sort of like, is he a bit like punch drunk or something like that? But then when he like
I
left,
was.
but like when he left like a week later, then it sort of like, put two and two together and that kind of thing. What's the story of him coming in? Was he ready at the time, essentially? And what sort of got him ready eventually? Because you've been putting out all these updates.
Yeah, Marcus was, first of all, he didn't think he was an addict.
Mm.
Like most addicts don't believe they're an addict. I like to drink. Like, you're an asshole when you drink. It affects everyone around you. For Marcus, it wasn't so much that. Marcus he wasn't really a drinker, but when you're a pillhead and you mix a Soma with a Xanax and using Xanax for sleep, but you're also going to use it for recreation sometimes. And when you put the two of them together and then you add booze, well, at some point, you go from talking like this to talk like that. And then you get behind the wheel, or you could be like this and behind the wheel, and then boom, it hits you. And then all of a sudden, this guy's driving.
Mm.
That's why he had so many bad accidents. He's been in rehab 5 or 6 times, but he never went there to go to rehab because he didn't think he was an addict. And Marcus had been reaching out to me probably for well, actually, when Jake was living with me, and this is 2013, it goes back to. And Mark was married to a woman named Judy at the time. And Judy had called me and she said, Dallas, will you please help Marcus? He's got to go in front of the judge on Thursday. This is like a Tuesday. She said, the judge already told him that he was going to put him in jail if you didn't get Diamond Dallas Page to come here and vouch for him. I was like, what? And she repeated it. I thought there's no way. But he had seen that HBO special that they did on me and Jake and Scott.
Mm-hmm.
And then he had seen some other stuff. He said, like, how this guy reaches out and helps guys like Marcus. So I went there and we got him out of jail, for not going to jail, but he never put the work in after that. Because I really wanted to groom, because he didn't have any real destination he didn't have any goals. He just going to keep wrestling, like, and doing on the road. Well, that never works out well. Never. And I wanted him to become a part of what I was doing. And even though he wasn't nowhere near as fucked up as he would be years later, but he didn't put the work in. See, most people don't understand discipline. And discipline is the truest form of self-love. Ignoring the current pleasure for the bigger reward to come. I was out with Mike Tyson one night, and we ran into each other, and we hit it off. And at some point, we started talking about training, and he told me that Customato told him when he was 14 years old, discipline is something you're going to hate, but if you can learn to love it, you could be the heavyweight champ of the world. Mm-hmm. He's 14. At 20, he's the heavyweight champ, the baddest man alive. And for me, understanding discipline is doing something that you need to do when you need to do it, whether you feel like doing it or not. Marcus didn't have any of that. I do. But it's self-taught and it's self-ingrained. I didn't have a Customato. I had me. And I teach that to people. Once you start to discipline yourself, things can really change. So during this time, over these years, Marcus has called me for help. He's asked me for borrow money. And loan money to addicts. But what I told him, I said, come over to my house. I got $1,000. You don't owe it to me. I'm just giving it to you right now. Your ATM here is closed. And I said, I have something I'm working on. I'm working on this docu-series. You'll never hear me call my shit a reality show because reality shows are bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
Docu-series or documentaries are real, like the resurrection of Jake the Snake. And when we finally put it together and we put the crew together, the two people that people will actually know, one, of course, is Marcus Bagwell. The other one is Butterbean. And Butterbean, when he came in my house, this is how he was standing, and he had crutches, and he would move with the crutches and walk like this. He could not stand past here. I'm like, Bean, just stand up. He goes, I can't. So I put him in a position where I could try to push him. I mean, he was stuck there. Like nothing was going to move to make him be able to do this. But by the end of that show, he was like this. And it was a lot of things. It was operations. It was everything. Hip replacements and stuff. But Bagwell was there to better his name because he knew he fucked up a lot. And as soon as we started showing that he was working with us, people started to book him more. Mm-hmm. He made a little bit more money. And I would say, Marcus, stop going on the shows. And because he would go every weekend away. And then he'd come back for like 3 or 4 days. And then he'd go away. I'll never do that again. Because that's where you really get them to grow in that time. And like we didn't put Jake out on the road after that first week for 3 or 4 months. Like you have no bills. I'm paying for everything. And for Jake, it was a labor of love for me because of what Jake did for me. And for Marcus, I always loved Marcus, but Marcus, a lot of people hated him because of his cocky attitude, but Mark Bagwell isn't that guy. So somewhere during the filming of Change or Die, I stopped calling him Buff. And I called him Buff for 2 decades. I would not call him Buff, but I wouldn't let anybody else call him Buff. His name's Marcus. We need to eliminate that asshole. And by the end of the show, and you'll see how it comes around, he does a turnaround. And you're like, wow. But it wasn't legit. And you'll see that too. And then we did an intervention. And it was like, you go to rehab? And hey, we filmed everything. Like there's shit that happens in that intervention. Like I've seen interventions on TV and I'm like, yeah, it's kind of bullshit.
It's not like the Breaking Bad intervention where you hold onto the talking pillow, that kind of thing.
Yeah. No, this is as real as it gets. Because one of the angels in his life is his niece. Her name is Jonna. And she's gorgeous, beautiful, just had her 3rd baby, was going through this whole thing with her Uncle Mark, pregnant as pregnant could be. And you got to see, I'm not going to give too much away, just put it like this. Coming out of that, what he went through with us, what they did was teach him everything we already taught him. So that really solidified a lot of what happened. And then you need someone to really be looking out for you after that. And we continue to. And right now, like about 7 years ago, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, like Jake had been sober for a long time. And all the fog had cleared. And Jake's a super smart guy. And about 7 years ago, I met a Jake Roberts I never knew. And today I know him really well. He's still the same guy, but he has a different set of morals and his character. It's everything. Like Cheryl, his wife, who was in the angle with Rick Rude,
absolutely,
35 years ago, they're back together. She wrote a beautiful thing. And she was really cards to herself in the beginning, like keeping it just between them. And then, now she's on Facebook talking about their beautiful, amazing relationship. And Jake is living his best life. It's going to be 68. And that's what I would tell Marcus. I'm like, Marcus, look what's happening to Jake. I go, you're not Jake Roberts. but you're not that far behind Jake Roberts. And if the fans can get to see who Marcus Bagwell is, I go, that will turn, everything will turn into money. And what I mean by that is people are going to want to book you. They're going to want to put you in things. They want to bring you back. And he didn't believe it. But today, he believes it because look what January did. Look what February did. Look where you're going now. And the docuseries ain't even out yet because people are going to be they're going to hate him at points, because he's being buff. And at some point, they're going to start to fall in love with him. And that's really that's like the arc of a character in the movies. Like what happened over this period of Change or Die, we couldn't have hoped for it if we were writing it ourselves. It just happened. And when you see that intervention part and some of the things that happen, like Jonna is there for him because as a little girl, his brother was not her dad. He did not step up for shit. So Mark did. And she never forgot it. And then there was a period of 20 years where her mom wouldn't let her be around him because he was an addict. So we're going to love him from afar. And she hated that. And when her mom died, Marcus was in a spot where he was almost ready. And so when it all came together, it just all worked because you need a support system if you're an addict. And people use just rehab is really tough. You've got to have a support system of people who really love and care about you. Let me read you something that do you know who Josh Brolin is?
An actor, yes.
Yes. So Josh is an addict, just like Robert Downey Jr. is an addict, and so forth and so on. Plenty of guys in Hollywood are addicts. So so Josh was a friend of where the hell did I just do this? Josh was friends with one of my buddies who is a producer, executive producer. He's one of the producers on The Resurrection of Jake the Snake. After he saw it, Josh Brolin saw it, he wrote this to my buddy Chris. That'll give you the setup of how it comes together. Okay, here it is. He wrote, Chris, just watched the doc and I'm in stunned silence. A happy ending. And then he put in parentheses, or at least until now. Question mark. Wow, DDP, what an amazing guy, a real man. Thank you so much for turning me on to that. A great story of hope and love and real compassion. I needed to see that. Like, that's what you have. When you have someone who's an addict, you've got to give them that hope and the compassion. You got to really love them in spite of who the fuck they are, and to help them get through. Like you got to make them accountable too, but Josh seeing that, like it was something he needed to see right then. And if there's ever a movie about the resurrection of Jake the Snake, my dream person to play him is Josh Brolin. I've been manifesting that for 9 years.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. How's Josh Brolin going to look like Jake the Snake Roberts? So how tall's Josh?
You got to take height out of it because if the other actors, he's 5'10", but if Jake, I mean, if the other actors are 5'9" and 5'11",
yeah,
what's the difference? No one looks at height,
Yeah, well, I was thinking, is it Chris Hemsworth who's trying to be Hulk Hogan at the moment, or he's training to be?
Yeah, that's what I heard. It takes so long to put those projects together. When you're looking, you got to remember, it's not like we're wrestlers there. In the resurrection of Jake the Snake, we're just ex-wrestlers. You get to see some of the wrestling, know who we are. But if the story's about resurrection, if this does happen down the line, I believe it could. it's about three guys who used to be wrestlers. And all you got to do is look at some of the biggest stars are 5'8", 5'9", 5'7" today. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So not really that big a deal in here, I don't think.
No. Because I mentioned Hogan, this was something I was going to ask later on, but I'll ask it now. Do you know Hulk Hogan's roughly current health situation? Because I don't know if he's got neuralgia, but I know he's had so many back surgeries, and it was in the papers pretty recently that he's walking with a cane a lot, and I think he was at Raw recently saying he basically couldn't feel his legs anymore. Do you know what Hogan's current health situation is?
I was in the room with him, and I didn't hear any of that from him. I did see him. He had a staff, and I know that he's had back issues. He's had like 8 back operations. I begged Hulk to let me come down and work with him. I begged him after he had like his third back surgery, and I showed him the video of Arthur, the disabled veteran. Some guys they're just so old school that they only know one thing, and that's the way they train. They have a set thing, and it's worked their whole life. So it's tough to break that. I love Hulk. I mean, Hulk was a big factor in the elevation of Diamond Dallas Page and with Randy Savage and the whole thing. I mean, it was a big factor. We should have had a pay-per-view together, me and him. Never understood how that didn't work out like that. I did twice, but they were in tag teams, but we should have had mano a mano, but like I say, I love Hulk, man. And it bums me out that he is feeling beat up, but that everybody, and one of the main reasons, because I don't go to do signings to make money. I don't. I'm very, very successful with what I've done in my investments and all the shit. But I love going to see the people, because the people who come to see me, and it'll be the same thing for the love of wrestling. At the end of April, the 29th and 30th in Manchester, 30% of the people who will come to see me will be just hardcore wrestling. Maybe 40% be hardcore wrestling fans. A certain percentage will come from the movies, whether it was Ready to Rumble or Devil's Rejects, and 40 to 50% of the people will come, could be from any of those movies or wrestling, but they're mainly there about DDPY. They want to tell me their story, and thank me. I can't tell you, James, how many times. I get really choked up sometimes because they're crying. I'm talking about men, bringing 250-pound men are tearing up, and I'm just breathing, trying not to, but sometimes I just do, I don't care. But it's really emotional. So I come out to see them, but I also want to lay credence to, For the Love of Wrestling is probably not a good example because a lot of the guys there are in really good shape still. But if you go to some of these ones that have the big wrestling convention, a lot of those guys, they can't get around, man. And they're younger than me. And so I'm like, look what I do. Look how they've lived. And there's a reason why I'm always talking about my shit, because it works. And I am the first poster boy,
As you say, you're coming up to 67. You're as fit as a fiddle, fit as a butcher's dog, as we say over here. I don't know if that's I don't know if that's something that translates over there as much. But you turned down, I believe, one final farewell match. I believe Conrad Thompson went to you and pitched a last match. How come you turned it down?
Oh, for starters, I don't think I could do anything that would be cooler. I couldn't do anything, I think, where I looked any better. And the finish was so explosive than that match I did in the AWA with QT and Dustin Rhodes against the Butcher and the Blade and MJF. I mean, that whole comeback, like Cody placed me in a spot to have me like sail out, you know. And afterwards, he asked me, "Do you have another one in you?" Uh, and I was like, "Not if you can't show me something that's going to be better than what we just did." You know. Now, let's just say it's a different place now. It's also 3 years later, but let's just say something. And Cody needed me to do something with him in WWE. I would take another look at that because that's a different animal. You know what I mean? If he needed, even to get my ass kicked just so he could do a comeback, you know what I mean? I would do whatever I want for that kid, because we have. Let me show you a picture. Let me just see where I have it. I normally have it out here on my table. Oh, here it is. This is a picture of me and Dusty and Cody when Cody wins his second straight state championship title. That's me and him go back to 12 years old. And me and Dusty smoking cigars and drinking beers, and I'm wearing the coat, the coyote coat. Where the hell I got that picture at? I got a picture of him in it because I gave it to him because Dusty gave it to me. And I love that coyote coat. And he wanted to borrow it for something for ROH. And inside that coat, it's inscribed in beautiful monogram stitching, Dusty Rhodes. And on the other side, it says Diamond Dallas Page. And when he brought the coat back, we were doing an interview, and he said, I almost put my name as a rib on the inside of that coat. And I said, you could have. I said, because the coat's yours. He was like, what? I said, coat's yours, man. Your dad gave it to me. If I need to borrow it, I know who to go to. I said, the coat's yours. And he was like, seriously? I'm like, yeah, seriously. So that coat's an infamous coat. I can't imagine what I could have sold it for, as far as being me and Dusty's, but the money means nothing. The moment means everything.
Well,
and him getting that coat was super cool.
Well, Ric Flair recently revealed he was paid $300,000 for his last match. I don't suppose that would encourage you to re-explore.
Nope. And you know what? That's the Nature Boy. We're talking about a guy. When you say the man, and I love Becky Lynch. I think she's amazing. But for my time, there's one guy who's the man. His name's Ric Flair. And I was blown away. I was at a signing in Baltimore, and I had a ridiculously long line. Of course, it wasn't as long as Nature's because we were right next to each other. But then I even had a long line like that, and sitting next to Nate if I probably got all his overflow, But I love Nature Boy, man. Here's a great picture when I went in the Hall of Fame, and me and Nature. There's been stuff that's been said, and all that shit went away 10 years ago or more, whenever it was. When I pulled him aside after remember when he did the big balloon drop in WWE?
No. What's the story there?
Well, it was when he retired. Like I don't remember what it was, 15 years ago, whatever it was. And they dropped the balloons, and all the boys come out, and everybody's teared up, and Nature's crying, and we didn't have heat together anymore at that point, but we didn't have any love either, And I thought, man, I love Ric Flair. I don't want to feel this way about him. I don't want him to feel this way about me. And when he walked in, we both had a signing that weekend. And when he walked in the door, he got hit by a million people, but eventually it was just me and him. He's like, hey, Diamond. I'm like, hey, Nate, you got a second? He's like, sure. Walk off to the side. I say, listen, Rick, I know over the years me and you have had some heat together. He's like, oh, Diamond, don't worry about that. I go, Rick, I'm not worried about it. Why don't you try and fix it, man? I said, I know I said some shit. You said some shit. I said, I don't give a fuck. I said, I don't know how it started, and I don't care. I'll tell you what I do care about. I said, I would love to start all over again, man. I said, I'm Diamond Dallas Page. I put my hand out and he popped. He grabbed me, pulled me in, God bless you, blah, blah, blah. And over the years, we got closer and closer and closer. When I went in the Hall of Fame, the following Monday, I'd gone to get something to eat, and I was passing, go to the elevator. Diamond, hey, over there, went over, had a drink with Rick, and he was, how you getting home? He goes, you still live in Atlanta? I said, yeah. He said, what time's your flight? I go, 7:30. He goes, oh my God. He goes, who booked that? I go, not me. He goes, fuck that. He goes, there's a FedEx over there. He said, I go check your bags. He goes, I got the limousine, the Lear jets. I'm flying you home. You're a Hall of Famer now. I said, Nate, I got all those bags. He goes, send them over to FedEx. And this is a picture of me and him that next day getting on the Lear jet and flying back with Nature Boy. And Rick gets in the co-pilot seat. I'm like, Rick, what are you doing up there? He goes, I'm not taking off or landing, but I'm going to fly a little bit. I'm like, oh, fuck. It was a good flight, though. He just kept us on course. And when he found out it was my birthday, then he took me out to dinner and wine and dined me. And of course, sent me home in a limousine, like the Nature Boy,
Oh, thank goodness for autopilot, at least, eh?
Yeah.
I'm right. So we've got 20 minutes, maybe slightly under. So I'm going to hit you with some of the big questions I'm hoping to get your opinion on. And there's a couple I've also asked Eric Bischoff, so I'd love your opinion on them as well. The NWO, if you're going to rebook it, which members would you keep and which would you not use?
If I was going to rebook it, because Ian and I had talked about this, when it was happening, and I was like, dude, why aren't we just the NWO right now? Like ECW, they chant ECW, they chant NWO. Why don't we make them the baby face? Make that the corporation, and WCW becomes the Outlaws. And he said, we can't do that. I go, why? He said, because Turner just spent a ton, millions of dollars developing that new logo. Remember, it looked like a spaceship.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It was so fucking brutal. Like, that was another thing that killed, that helped to kill us, was shit like that. Like, no, this is wrestling. It's not fucking Star Trek,
Did you fall over? Right, so you remember the new logo comes up, and then they have some of the logo coming onto the ramp, and wrestlers couldn't stop stepping on it and slipping over. Did you ever fall over?
I don't really remember that.
Oh, okay.
I will tell you, I used to do the bang, and I'd shake and pop down like the first time I did it, when the nitro, fireworks went off, I tripped and started falling down the stairs when I did that. And of course, I caught myself. And when I watched it back, I was like, fuck, that looks awesome. So sometimes shit you thought looked bad. That's another reason I taped everything, all my matches. So mad at myself for over taping them when we were on the road, because I had Steve Austin. That's where Steve Austin, Stone Cold, was born, because on the road, he would do color commentating that was priceless. He would imitate Gordon Soley and Jim Ross. And I mean, he was so much fun following my matches and just burying me, just having fun with me. I thought, man, I got to start saving these. And the one I had, and I lost that one, was me against Pillman and Steve doing color. But Kevin Nash would come on, Raven would come on, Regal, Mick Foley. All these guys were on these tapes. And oh my God. And I finally taped the last one, and I called it the Austin tape. And I was going to take them all back and tape, go back and put them on VHS. And he got hurt, and then Eric fired him. And I was like, no, not that guy. Because me and Steve were super tight and still are today. But back then, I was like, oh my God, of all people to fire, not that guy.
With we slightly got off the original question there. If you're going to book on the NWO and a group, so who are the only exclusive members of the NWO?
I don't really know that. Again, like I said, I would have kept them all and just did a whole different,
Like David
tournament.
Flair?
He was he in the NWO?
He was for a brief period, yeah. David Flair, Virgil.
Yeah, okay. There's a bunch of guys that that weren't killers. If you look at the Four Horsemen, they were all killers. You know what I mean? So, like, I don't know. I don't want to expressly take different people off it, but I know the guys who worked. Scotty Steiner worked. Buck Bagwell worked. There was, of course, Nash, Hall, Hogan. I think they would have been my center five guys. If I would have kept them, if I could build like a Four Horsemen group, those are the five guys that I would pick.
This is another question I asked Eric Bischoff, and I'm keen to know if you've got an answer as well. So he said August of 1998. When I asked him, when did you know that WCW was not going to be long for this world, when WWF had absolutely won the war? Obviously before they bought it.
You have to understand what happened after that. And I got this all secondhand nature from people, but from what I understand, Jamie Kilner was the guy in charge of Turner Sports.
Yeah.
And he hated wrestling. And Eric Bischoff, and I'm sure he told you, he was going to buy the company for $50 million. And he was going to absorb all the contracts, which was at least $30 million. And he had the backing for it. So for Jamie Kilner to go, no, you know what? Because you put down, you're going to have WCW on TBS for 10 years. That's one of our stations that turned around. Like, that was part of the deal. Not the deal Eric Bischoff wanted. He wanted to take it to another network. But in the contract, it said that. So we're going to cancel wrestling. Wrestling had been the number one show for over 37 years. So wouldn't you say, okay, to Eric Bischoff, go find another network. I'll give you 3 months. And keep it going for 3 months. And give them a chance to sell it, because you're going to give us $50 million and take 30 million plus in guarantees. Like, you wouldn't have lost maybe another 3 or 4 million. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You wouldn't have lost another 3 or 4 fucking million to make 80 plus million.
Yeah.
So
crazy.
To me, yeah, but to me, and I've said this in I've never seen the WWE use it, but I've said it as footage. What if Vince McMahon, the smartest men in professional wrestling ever, what if he got a hold of Jamie Kilner, knowing his feelings, and said, I'll give you $5 million to not let them find another place to put that, and I'll buy it for $5 million. Because who would sell it for $5 million? Fuck, bro. If I knew it was selling for $5 million, I would have raised it. And most of it would have been my money.
I'm going to upset you here. They sold it for $2.5 million.
Oh, I thought it was 5. That was Bischoff said.
Well, I'll tell you what it was. It was $2.5 million, and then the legal fees were something like 1.8. So it was around 4.3 million total.
Yeah, but I would have bought it for that. I would have raised the money. If he gave Bischoff that opportunity, he'd have bought it.
Yeah.
And it would have cost him nothing. He would have bought it and got it. I mean, absurd. So to me, there was something that had to happen because surely Jamie Kilner wasn't that stupid, you know? So,
Hey, do you know who?
the
Do you
other
know
way I
who?
see it,
Do you know who they turned down? I think 25 million was raised by investors. They wouldn't even talk to Jerry Jarrett, who just, in fact, died a week or two ago as well. Jerry Jarrett went to
yeah.
them with 25 million in investment, and they wouldn't even talk to him. Didn't even entertain the offer.
Well, again, that shows you that something was fucked up in Denmark, you know? And, and if Vince did do that, then he actually won the war.
Hmm.
But for some asshole just to get rid of wrestling, you were beating us, but you didn't win the war. Not as far as I'm concerned. There was sleight of hand. Well, then you win the war. You know, you won it. But who gives a fuck?
Yeah, it's all history now. It's all history now. Listen,
Yeah.
there's one more thing. We've got a few more minutes left, and this was really the big finale I wanted to end on. And when I interviewed you the first time, it was only a few days after we'd lost Scott Hall. And as I interview you now, or when this interview is released, it's pretty much going to be on the anniversary of his passing, so it'll be 1 year since. So I wanted to talk about Scott Hall a bit, and I suppose, can you give me some things that maybe people might not realise about Scott that made him a cut above other wrestlers and things like that? Obviously, he had the look when he dialed it in, when you talked to him and did the whole Scarface thing. But what else about Scott really made him a cut above other wrestlers as a performer?
Man, he was super smart. I mean, I compare him to Jake, you know, and that's as high an honor to, as far as I'm concerned, that you can get. And I compared, they were kind of like, he was like that version of Jake, that generation's Jake Roberts. Like he could lay, I mean, the way the psychology of his matches, you know, was just brilliant. And his selling. I mean, guy could be a babyface or a heel. People didn't really want to see him as a heel, you know, but he played it a lot. You know, you know, he would never really tell you what to do unless it was spot on. Like there was times like when example would be about me being as a manager, you know, overshadowing the boys. He told me, he goes, stop doing that. I go, dude, and again, I thought I knew. He told me less is more. You know, in the ring, no, you don't have to do 15 things. Do two. And when you think you're going too slow, slow down. Like those are just three things there that I would literally call him. And if he didn't answer the phone, I'd leave him a message. Hey, bro, remember when you said less is more? Like it finally clicked. You think you're going too slow? Slow down. You know, they go boom, boom, boom. Like my favorite wrestling is storytelling with the big impact that goes through it. I appreciate a lot of the new wrestling that is more like video game wrestling, one bump after another, like one death crushing finishing bump into another, into another small package. 1, 2, 3. You know, I'm not as emotionally involved in that, you know, but I do totally respect the athleticism. And they have been telling kind of cool stories with some matches like that, but they're not my favorite. I want the one that pisses me off, and I'm starting to hate you for doing that to him or to her. Like MJF is the best heel in professional wrestling. He's a real heel. Like he won't even put stuff up. Like it was me and him together. He wouldn't put that picture up there. You know what I mean? He's not going to do it. He's going to live the gimmick. Very hard to get real heat today. He's got it. You know, the whole thing that the Bloodline did, even those guys are all borderline baby faces like NWO was, because they're so good. They're so fucking good. But Sammy is such the baby face. Bischoff, in an interview compared his rise to fame like mine. And it was. It was against the NWO. I was a humongous babyface against a bunch of guys that were babyface heels. Because Kevin Scott taught me, like, you're not a babyface, you're not a heel, you're a superstar. It doesn't matter if they cheer you or boo you, they just got to do one or the other. Or they can be doing both at the same time. To me, like, Scott was one of the best storytellers. And if I could have helped him get sober back when he was working, can't even imagine the work he would have done. Because it was great. It was great when he was on his way, to not being what he was at the end because he was drinking too much, But, it was tough. It was tough. I don't think anything bothered me that much as Dusty. It was like Dusty and Scott, like, more than my grandfather or my grandmother, like those two guys were really close.
Yeah. With Scott, you can tell me to just move on or whatever, but what was it with Scott that would, because obviously you would try and help him and he would be doing very well for long periods of time and there would be wobbles here and there, but what was sort of his triggers specifically?
No, I don't really know that, except for a lot of times he'd be by himself. And I think anyone who's an addict who's by themselves, it's not a good combination.
Yeah.
And, all I finished off saying is that he is missed. He lit the internet up, like when he passed, wow. There was so many people who really cared about him, like loved him. And if he would have loved himself more, I think he'd probably still be around here.
Absolutely. And also one of the king wind-up merchants on the road, as well as a sort of travel partner, I believe. Is there any, like, a funny story to end on with Scott where, let's say you were traveling with him and he just knew how to push your buttons or wind you up or something like that?
He was never really like that. He was a subtle dude, man. Scott might not say, I'll give you an example. Like when he came in the house and he was, now he's sober. And the lawyers for my program, I wanted to call it zero impact because there's really no impact in DDP yoga. And the lawyers say you can't say that. You can't say zero impact because you're moving. So I couldn't think of, like kick-ass cardio, dramatically increase your flexibility, strengthen your core at a whole different level. I didn't have the ending. So for 2 hours, my team and I deliberated this we call it the Sons of Anarchy room because a huge table that we had. And didn't come up with, and the ideas that people came up with, they were lame. And I walked in the kitchen to grab something, and Scotty pulls me over side. He goes, "Hey, Dally, I don't want to step on anybody's toes or anything, but couldn't help but hear what you guys were talking about." He said, "What about minimal joint impact?" I was like, "Oh, that's fucking perfect. Oh my God." Like, it became a part of the 4 things. And that was Scott Hall, because I didn't come up with it. Steve couldn't come up with it. Nobody did. But Scott Hall did. And he always had those nuggets. Freaking, he could just be listening to some guy tell a story, and at some point, so I got his ass and I whooped his ass. And he would go, "He'd kill you." He'd kill you. Like he always had those like one-liners that just burst out laughing, made you look kind of stupid. It's kind of like what he came up for. The best example is bad times don't last, but bad guys do.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember the beginning part of that, but when he was getting ready for the Hall of Fame, and you got to remember, those two guys going in the Hall of Fame was like me going in. If I never went in, which I knew they had eventually put me in there because of WCW, but if I never went in for this, to be the guy that helped both of those guys get sober enough that where the company would trust them again. Like, that's so huge. And to have been that and being able to work it and to be there for that. And Scott telling me, Dally, I'm not going to say a lot for this Hall of Fame. He said, but here's my finish. And when he said the finish to me, I was like, brilliant. And of all the quotes you'll ever hear in someone's induction speech, that will always be there. I got to go, bro.
No,
remember,
absolutely.
Everybody, go to ddpyogaworkshops.com, and I will see you. Where am I going to see you at, James? Where are you coming to?
Oh, I'm coming to the Manchester signing, so I will see you there. Okay. And just before I let you go, hard work pays off, dreams come true, bad times don't last, but bad guys do.
But bad guys do.
Thank you so much, Dallas.
Amazing. Hey, boy, have a great day, man.
Yeah.
See ya.
I'll see you in 6 weeks. Bye.